So, hello. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Pharis, and I will talk to you tonight about peer assessment. Whereas James just talked to you about assessment for your sake, for the teacher's sake, I want to talk about assessment for the benefit of the students. I want to look at assessment from their perspective. So while we're having some of these papers passed out here, the reason is because James and I actually share an affinity for puns. I guess you could say we are both gluttons for punishment. Sorry. But I won't start off my presentation with puns, but we will talk about some puns a little later. I would like you to make your own pun. It doesn't have to be original. If it is, great. But if it's one you've heard before, that's fine. I just want you to contribute a little later in the presentation. We will come and pick those up from you. So, I want to begin by telling you a little bit about my experience teaching third graders in high school at Chungcheong High School in Gwangju. I didn't usually teach the third grade class. Their curriculum was so tight, they were so focused on getting into university that the administrators didn't think it was too important for them to have a native speaker class. But I was given one class for a very specific purpose, and that was to help them deal with and get through successfully their English language interviews that they had to take when they were going into university. At first, I wasn't exactly sure how to lead a class like this, but as I thought about it, I realized the real problem these students would have is not their English ability, because I had some students that actually could speak pretty well, but when they would do this sort of exercise, they froze up completely. And the problem was the nerves, the fear they felt from this sort of an activity. So I decided to address that in the class. And the way I did that was to do one-on-one interviews with the kids, short interviews, where I could give them immediate feedback. But then we would take that, and I would have the students interview each other in front of the class, one-on-one, with the rest of the class watching. The student who was being interviewed would try his best to give the best interview he could, but everyone else in the class would have whiteboards. And in their teams, they would assess this student being interviewed on how well he was doing, according to some qualifications, some metrics that we had decided on before. Is he sitting up straight? Is he speaking clearly? Are his answers good? Does he make eye contact? Things like that. At the end of the interview, then the class could immediately share where they saw there were strengths and where there were some areas that that student needed to improve. So not only did the students have a chance to practice giving an interview in a stressful situation, but the actual process of them evaluating each other made them think more critically about what makes a good interview and how they could improve themselves. And that is the power of peer evaluation. It's not that the students will immediately assess each other accurately. Rather, it's the insight and the understanding that they gain through the process of evaluating each other. So, the goals of this presentation: first, I'd like to define peer assessment, talk about some of the advantages of peer assessment, some ways you can implement this into your classrooms, and then there will be some time for questions and discussion after we do a couple of exercises ourselves, so we can understand how this works. So, moving right along, peer assessment. I'm sorry, not peer assessment. Peer assessment. What is it? Can anyone tell me, what is peer assessment? What does this mean?
Getting feedback from a peer.
Oh, fantastic. Exactly, getting feedback from a peer. Peers giving feedback to each other. I've got a definition that I'd like to share of it. It's a process whereby students or their peers grade assignments or tests based on predetermined benchmarks. This is what peer assessment is, but more importantly, peer assessment is an invaluable tool for students to understand and internalize their learning more deeply. And that's what I want to focus on. So let's talk about some of the advantages of peer assessment. There's very many. I want to talk about 4. The logistic, educational, meditative, and effective advantages of peer assessment. First, logistical. I think James mentioned that it's difficult for us to grade tests. You don't have time. There's many, many students. With peer assessment, you have an entire classroom of students who can grade simultaneously, an army of graders. Tests can be graded like that, very quickly. The students get quicker feedback because of this. You can do this immediately after the assessment. You can do this maybe the class after that. So students can see what they need to improve right after they make these tests. And the students can get more detailed feedback. It's hard for us as teachers to have one-on-one conversations with every student about everything that we score for them. So when students assess each other, they can talk with each other and give that more detailed feedback. They have the time for that as opposed to us. There are educational benefits. Students, by judging their peers on the correctness of their answers, they can form a more deeper understanding of the topic itself. And even just thinking about another person's answers can help them to change their ideas or to grow their skills, even if they don't agree. There's many metacognitive advantages. These are advantages that go beyond learning. When students assess each other, it demystifies testing. It's no longer removed from them. It's something they can take part in. They are more aware of their strengths, their progress, and the places where there's gaps, where they still need to work a little more. They have initiative and self-evaluation. When they know that they're going to be graded and how they're going to be graded, before they even turn in an assignment, they will look at it with a more critical eye. They will think, how will I grade this if I got this paper? Is this good enough? Should I turn this in this way? Students use higher order thinking skills when they have to judge their peers on their answers. And finally, there's a future professional relevance to this. As adults, as teachers, we don't really take tests anymore. Most professionals don't take tests. On rare occasions, yes. But for the most part, we create a product. We create lesson plans. And we don't wait for a grade to come back on those lesson plans before we use them. They need to be good when we use them the first time. And so we self-evaluate for that. These students, by doing peer assessments, learn that process. They will make better products from the get-go. Finally, there are effective advantages in the attitudes of your students. There's a shared ownership in the learning process. Now they understand better what it is you do and why they're learning what they're learning. They become more productive, friendlier, and cooperative. This makes for a much better classroom. And the reason for testing is illuminated. It's no longer an arcane thing. And students aren't as likely to think that a bad grade is some sort of punishment. If a student misbehaves and gets a bad grade, he might think there's a correlation there. When in reality, he could and should think about that bad grade as a metric for him to measure his own standard. What did I do wrong? How can I do this better? All in all, this makes for happier students who are much more willing and confident when they take tests. So how can we use this in our classrooms? Well, it takes sort of a step-by-step method. We can't jump right into it. First, we can start with guided assessments, where we give examples and we work with a rubric. Let the students gauge whether these examples are correct and correct them all together. We can move on to class assessments, where the class is actually judging content that the class itself has made. From there, we can move on to team assessments, where teams make content and teams judge each other. And hopefully, we could get to individual assessment, where students can work one-on-one, or at least on individual papers to gauge each other. But you may be asking, what's the student buy-in? Why is a student going to do this? Well, there's an intrinsic motivation with this once the student has done it some and realizes how it can help. This is how it was at Chungnyang. The students would do this rather scary interview class, but they would learn that they could really improve with this. But before they can get to that point, they need some sort of extrinsic motivation. And I would suggest that whatever reward system you use, weight it toward assessment. Give them rewards for doing the work, but maybe give them more rewards for doing the assessment, because that's where the learning really will take place. They will understand much more from the assessment than from doing the worksheet itself. Great. Now we've talked about it, let's try it. Together, let's do some guided assessment. I will give you examples, and I want you to assess the examples for me. But before we can assess anything, we need a rubric. So, let's make a rubric together. Ideally, when you use a rubric, you would make it with your students. That's not always possible, so you can provide a rubric instead if you want to. You'll see in your book, on page 22 and 23, there's a couple of different types of rubrics that could be used for different activities. For us, we are going to be judging, you guessed it, puns. So, we need to make a rubric together. We need to decide what makes a good pun. So, I'm going to quickly make a rubric here. And someone give me an example. Let's get 2 or 3 metrics that we can gauge by. What makes a good pun, if you think there's such a thing? What makes a good pun?
Unexpected.
Okay, unexpected?
Play on words.
Sure, plays on words. Let's do it this way. Word play. Please forgive my handwriting. Maybe one more? Can we think of one more thing?
Funny.
Funny. Hopefully it's funny. Hopefully. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few puns here. And we'll very simply judge these by these criteria. And I want you to show me with your hands how you vote. So if it's good, thumbs up. Everybody, let's see them. Thumbs up. All right. If it's okay, thumbs sideways. If it's really not good, thumbs down. All right, let's start here. The first example, a dyslexic man walked into a brawl. So, is it unexpected? Yes, maybe no? Let me see. Okay, we have mostly yes, okay. Is there wordplay? Yes, definitely. Is it funny? Mixed reaction. I'm going to mark yes. Next example. What is a vampire's favorite drink? Does anyone know this? A vampire's favorite drink is kopi. Kopi. Is it unexpected? Sure, yes, okay. Wordplay? Yeah, multilingual wordplay. Funny? Yeah, all right. Mixed reaction, but I'm going to mark yes. How did the hipster burn his mouth? You know this one? What is it? Yeah.
Before it was cool.
He did indeed. He drank his coffee before it was cool. So, unexpected? Yeah. Apparently not for her. For some people, we'll do a maybe on that. Wordplay, yes? Yeah, okay, maybe not so good. Is it funny? Absolutely not. Okay. No. Those who jump off bridges in Paris are insane. Unexpected? Okay, yeah. Wordplay? Yeah. Funny?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thanks. It's not original. And last one, why does a scarecrow get invited to present at the TEEC? Why? Because he was outstanding in his field. So, unexpected? Ew. Wordplay? Yeah, I mean, it's there, but nobody wants to say it. Is it funny? Oh gosh, okay. All right, no, good. So this is guided assessment. I hope that by assessing these puns, you have learned what makes a good pun and a bad pun, or at least a bad pun. So now let's move on to class assessment. For us, we're not really a class, so it's just a large group. But you remember those papers that you got at the beginning? I hope you've written a pun on those, because at this time, I'd like you to pass that paper to the center aisle, and my teachers here and I are going to come and collect these puns from you. Please pass them here. Anybody else want to toss theirs into the mix? Okay, we have one more?
Two more, actually.
I may not go through all of these in the interest of time. Just take some at random here. But I want us to judge these puns by the same, by the same rubric that we use for these. Is it unexpected? Is there wordplay? Is it funny? So, why are there high walls around a cemetery? Because people are dying to get in. So, unexpected? Yeah, okay. Wordplay? Sure. Funny? Okay. Oh. God. All right. Did you hear about the agnostic dyslexic insomniac? He'd lay in bed at night wondering if there really is a dog. God, dog. Yeah. Okay, unexpected?
Yeah.
Sure. Wordplay?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Funny? I like it. Ooh, what is the oldest Korean vegetable? The oldest Korean vegetable. Might need some Korean speakers on this one. The answer? The answer, 양파, because it's onyeon. Onyeon. Onyeon 양파. Unexpected. Wordplay? Yeah, multilingual again. Funny? Ooh. Okay. What do they call it when the stock market is on fire? When the stock market is burning, it's a bonfire. Unexpected? Wordplay? Funny? Okay. All right, one more picked at random completely from these three. Camping is intense. Intense. Unexpected? Yeah. Wordplay? Yeah. Funny? Sure. Okay, great. So this is class assessment. We assessed using a rubric that we already had. We assessed content that the class made. We did it together. From here, we should move on to, oh, I forgot. Before I was going to do this, I was going to share an original pun with you. So we have these birds in my home of Louisiana called egrets, and they're very beautiful white birds. And as I was driving to New Orleans one time from my home in Alexandria with my friend, we passed one of these birds on the road, and I turned to her and I said, if you pass an egret on the way out, and you pass the same egret on the way back in, is that a regret? I'm not going to judge this one. But my friend did. She doesn't like puns. And she turned to me and said, Jonathan, that joke was a regret. So, from here we can move on to team assessment. In the interest of time and logistics, I'm not going to do this with you. I'll just give you a brief explanation. So, if you have, say, 6 teams in your class, each team can make their own content. When it's time for the assessment, they can pass, all shift their papers, or their project one, and the team that gets the new paper will assess. Give it a certain amount of time, shift again. By the time any group gets their paper back, then there have been 5 separate assessments on that project, which can give you a really good measurement of how well that team has done. It can give them a lot of feedback on how they can improve. So that's how team assessment can be done. There's some more detail about this in the book. If you're interested, please look there. But I would like to do one more activity with you to demonstrate individual assessment. This is a blind drawing exercise. You can do this in your classes if you like. We'll talk about that a little bit when it's finished. But in individual assessment, you'll be assessing each other one-on-one. So I'd like everyone to turn to page 21 of their booklet. I hope you still have your writing implement. If you don't, well, why? What we're going to do for a blind drawing exercise, you'll see there's a rubric at the bottom, some blank space in the middle. I'm going to describe an image to you. I want you to recreate the image in the blank space. Draw the picture. You don't have to draw well. Also, you don't have to draw slow. You have to draw fast, because I'm going to give you these clues fairly quickly. I'll read them, and then they'll go away. So if you miss it, too bad. So here we go. Everyone, pencils ready? Let's go. A man and a woman are standing in a room. The man is on the left, the woman on the right. They are holding hands. Neither of them look particularly happy or sad. Blank expressions. The man is wearing a large hat and a robe. His right hand is raised. The woman is wearing a long pleated dress and a veil covering her hair and shoulders. Her left hand is on her stomach. She might be pregnant. Behind and to the right of the woman is a large bed with a canopy. Large canopy bed. Behind and to the left of the man is a desk with oranges on top. Behind the desk is a window. At the man's feet are a pair of sandals. Between and above the couple is an ornate chandelier with one candle. Hanamai. On the wall behind the couple is a round mirror. There is some writing above the mirror and beads hanging beside it. Under the mirror sits a chair. In front of the chair is a second pair of slippers. Intrigue. And one final clue. Between and in front of the couple is a small dog. So, how are your drawings shaping up? Do you have... What?
I failed our class.
Oh, that's okay. We're just having fun. Sketches. Does anybody maybe recognize this image? You do? Can you tell me what it is?
Oh, I can't remember the title, but the woman she's wearing a green dress.
Mhm.
There's something, I forget what you see in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Is it by
The artist, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Young and late?
Yes, it's Vermeer. It's the Arnold Feeney portrait. This is the original. It's kind of hard to see here. There's a lot to this painting. I didn't describe nearly all there is. But yes, you're right. In the reflection, you can see the back of the couple, and you can see the painter, actually. Supposedly it's Vermeer himself. So, I want you to trade your books with someone sitting next to you, and quickly judge, assess how your partner did. All right, so we have a bunch of masterpieces, I'm assuming. Can I assume that? Please pass the booklets back when you're finished assessing. I'd like to move on in the interest of time here. If you want to do something like this with your students, I would suggest a simpler image. I would also suggest having the students describe to one another, perhaps back to back, and then they can assess whether or not the drawing is accurate. So, I hope that through some of the things we've done here tonight, you can see how big an advantage your students can have if they seriously assess themselves. And I hope that you would try to implement some of these techniques into your classroom. I have some additional resources here that I used to make this presentation. If you liked the puns, there's a lot more at terriblepuns.org. So if you have any questions about the presentation, my email address is at the beginning of the article. You can email me. I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have. Right now, do you have questions? Do you have comments? I'd like to open the floor to you. Okay. In that case, I think we're about to have a break time. You have a lot of pencils. They don't belong to you. So, I'm going to stand by the door with a bucket. Please put the pencils back. They're not mine. They're Corny's. She's gonna write my neck. Okay, thank you very much.